If there's one thing you're not going to have any trouble finding here in Italy, it is a supermarket. Now, unfortunately, many supermarkets here in Italy do not allow you to film inside or take photographs. So I'm going to want you to close your eyes and imagine we are in a supermarket location together. Visualization complete? Let's get into the video. Now, the first thing that you need to know about supermarkets here in Italy is that there are many different types of supermarket. We've got Conad, which tends to be the supermarket that you can find pretty much everywhere in Italy. Selects, Coop. I want to say co-op so badly because it does mean cooperative, but Coop I think is the correct pronunciation. Then we also have other supermarket chains that are more regional based. For example, Sole 365 is a supermarket chain that you will find in and around the Campania region. So you've got to really pay attention to this because not every supermarket you will find everywhere. Another example, Paghi Poco and Ard. These were two supermarkets that we used to frequent in Palermo in Sicily. So there is a very wide selection. You've also got Penny, which tends to be more of like a discount supermarket chain. And then of course we've got Lidl, which you will find absolutely everywhere, and Aldi, which tends to be more in the central and northern parts of Italy. There are also many other supermarket brands as well. This is just a selection of what came to mind when I sat down and really thought about supermarket brands here in Italy. Now, I will say to you, I don't really know what the supermarket situation is like in places like Sardinia or any of the other islands. So if you live in one of those locations or you can help, comment below and share with us what is it like, because I can only really comment on my experiences here in mainland Italy and in Sicily. So do share that information with us so we can help each other. Now, when it comes to these particular supermarkets, you will find that some of them will have city supermarkets and then the larger stores. Now, the city supermarkets tend to be in more prominent city centre locations. They tend to be a lot smaller and they also tend to be a little bit more expensive as well. So those kinds of supermarkets are great to go to if you need to get something quickly, you've forgotten something, you're coming home from work, whatever it may be, and you just need to quickly get a couple of bits. Those are where I would suggest that you go, but I wouldn't suggest that you go to the city supermarkets for your weekly shop because you will find that they will be a lot more expensive with less variety. Now, something to note here is that some of the smaller versions of the supermarket chains are actually managed and run on an independent basis, even though they have the company branding. Conad is a good example of this. So, for example, in Sicily, there used to be different Conad stores, but they would all be managed on like an independent basis. So it meant sometimes that you might find a different layout in the supermarkets. You might find a different selection of goods. You might find, that some supermarkets have different offers compared to others. So this is something to note. It's almost like a franchise model in a way, in terms of independent ownership, but with the same branding and company logo. So this can be different sometimes to what you may be used to in your own country, for example. Now, aside from the branded supermarkets, you will also have independently managed and owned supermarkets, which I will say to you are very nice to visit, especially if you're here on holiday or you're visiting a particular part of Italy. It's very nice to support these businesses because I do think sometimes the big chain shops and supermarkets tend to dominate the retail sector. However, I will say that these kinds of places do unfortunately tend to be quite expensive and don't often have the best range of food. So they're good to go to for some things, but again, similar to the city versions of these supermarkets, they wouldn't be necessarily where I would go to get my weekly food shop from. Now let's talk about opening hours, because pretty much most supermarkets will be open all day without any kind of closure. Now you will find that the small independently run supermarkets may close for a couple of hours in the afternoon, but certainly for the bigger stores and for the chains, they tend to be open all day, including on a Sunday. Now, depending on what country you're coming from, that may come as a bit of a surprise because some shops in the UK, for example, particularly the larger shops, have to adhere to Sunday trading laws, which means they can only open for 6 continuous hours. Whereas here in Italy, you will find that the bigger supermarkets, especially, can be open to as late as 9:30 at night on a Sunday. So this can be really convenient on one hand, but perhaps not so nice for the staff that have to work on the other. Now, the smaller versions of the supermarkets as they operate really to their own kind of rule book, some of them will close on a Sunday. You tend to find that it's the bigger versions of those supermarkets that will be open on a Sunday. So this is something really good to know if you suddenly forget that you need to buy something, for example, and it's like, I don't know, 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening. Now, what you can find in the supermarkets really depends on the size of them. If we're going to talk about one of the larger versions, like a superstore or a larger version of a supermarket chain, you will typically find all of your dried goods as you would in any sized supermarket, as well as a meat counter, a fish counter, and a bread counter. And some supermarkets, depending on the size, will even have a counter where they have kind of like lunch dishes that you can order and take away, like pasta, or they can make paninis, things like this. So it really depends on the size of the supermarket itself. Now, you will also find that in some of the larger supermarkets, they may even have a pharmacy, and they may even have an adjoining pet store as well, which you can find in the really, really big supermarket chains. So this can be really convenient because you can literally go there and get everything you need under one roof. Smaller supermarkets, as I've said before, tend to have less variety. You're less likely to find like a meat counter, fish counter, anything like that. But, it all depends on what you want. However, I do have some tips concerning supermarkets, so let's talk about them. Now, when it comes to buying your meat, fish, fresh fruit and vegetables, do I recommend buying them from the supermarket? My answer is going to be, it really depends, because the quality isn't always the same across the board. Now, I've tried my fair share of supermarket fish, meat and fruit and vegetables in the course of the 7 years that I've been living here to date. And I will say to you that some supermarkets are better than others. Soleil, for example, I actually like the meat from, but I don't like the meat from Conad. And that includes from the meat counter, not just the prepackaged meat that you can buy in the refrigerators. So I think it really depends. It's personal preference, but of course, the quality is never going to be the same as if you were to go to an independent butcher or an independent fishmonger or greengrocer. This is what you must consider. Now, as much as you might pay a little bit more to go to those independent shops, let me tell you, it is worth it sometimes. And I think it's a balance. So this is my honest answer to you. I don't think that all supermarket meat is fantastic. Even if you have like the meat counter on the supermarket, I think it's always better to go to those individual shops. And in a way, it's kind of the culture here in Italy to want to do that. As much as people do use these services, which is why they exist in some of the larger supermarkets, there's more of a cultural inclination to go to the independent butchers, the independent fishmongers, the independent greengrocers, and get those items there. And I have to be honest with you, you have more variety. You're more likely to have like locally sourced meat as well, which we all know is going to taste a lot fresher, as well as fish and of course fruit and vegetables. But it's just a personal preference, I think. But that would be my tip to you. Like, if you really want to try the supermarket versions of these types of food, then kind of, sample a few different ones from different supermarkets until you find what you think could be best for you.
I'm about to start editing this video and I realise I forgot to say something really important, so I don't have my mic connected, so I hope that you can hear me. When it comes to fresh fruit and vegetables in the supermarket, you need to weigh them yourself and also put a sticker on the bag with the barcode for the cashier to ring through at the checkout, because not many people know how to do this sometimes. And I saw a group of tourists in this very situation just the other week. They had purchased different fruit and vegetables, just put them into the bags and hadn't bothered to weigh them and put the sticker on them, perhaps because they didn't know that that was the procedure. It's not always really labelled very clearly in supermarkets because it's just the way things are here. And I think in some countries it's also the same. But you must do this, and it's also the same for bread if it's self-service as well. Also gloves, you need to wear gloves if you're handling kind of fresh fruit, bread, vegetables, anything like this. It's common practice now, and especially so after the pandemic as well, it definitely came kind of under focus a little bit more as well for hygiene reasons. But yes, so consider this, okay? The cashier is there just to ring through the goods, especially in the bigger supermarket chains.
When it comes to fresh bread, I would say though, the supermarket fresh bread can be nice. I like the fresh bread from Conad, for example, from Sole. I don't have a problem with that. Even Eter, I forgot to talk about Eter. This is yet another supermarket brand here in Italy. So yes, bread is not a problem. I think universally, wherever you go, fresh bread is pretty nice. So, you know, that's okay to buy from the supermarket. Now, many of the big supermarket chains here will have their own branded goods in the store itself to buy. Now, whilst a lot of people here do prefer to buy a brand that they know and trust, usually the more premium brands, I will tell you that own branded supermarket goods can actually be quite nice, and usually they are made by those more premium companies as well, just as a side note. Now, I will tell you from personal experience, I do like some of the Conad own branded goods. So for example, their pasta is really nice, their cheese, also their breakfast range tends to be pretty good as well, and like packaged bread, things like this. This is nice from the Conad range. Yogurts, things like this. I've never had a problem from them. But it's trial and error again. Sole, I've tried their own branded range and that is nice too. So you've just got to try some of the own branded goods, but don't dismiss them in favour of more well-known brands, because sometimes you can pay a little less, but still have something as equally delicious as the more premium brands that you can see on the supermarket shelves. So it's a really, really good tip, and I encourage you to try and sample as many different types of food in the supermarkets and as many different brands as you can until you learn to find your favourites. Okay, I'm editing this video and I realised I forgot something else. How annoying. I wrote a script for this and everything. So here goes. Dogs in supermarkets. Now, this is something that might come as a bit of a surprise to you, because here in Italy, dogs are allowed in some supermarkets with particular conditions. So Conad is a good example of a supermarket that does allow dogs to enter their stores. However, they have to sit in a designated shopping trolley and remain in that trolley throughout the entire shop. Now, other supermarkets are not the same. Sole, for example, doesn't allow dogs to enter. So it really depends on the individual supermarket themselves. This is something that might come as a surprise because, for example, in the UK, it's not really a very dog-friendly country, and dogs are not allowed in as many shops as they are here in Italy. So there is a different approach to dogs being allowed in establishments here in Italy. So it's good to know this, absolutely. Now let's talk about wine, my most favourite topic of all. Now, I will tell you that supermarket wine can actually be really, really good. Now, when it comes to wine, you've got a couple of different options. You can buy bottles of wine from the supermarket, from independent supermarkets, things like this. But you can also go to specific wine shops where they sell you wine in plastic bottles from the barrel, fresh. Now, this is wonderful, and it gives you an opportunity to try locally sourced wine as well, which can be really good. It's also really economical as well because, for example, there's a local wine shop that we go to, and you can buy like a litre of wine there. It's like just over €2 per litre. So this can be like a more economical way to buy, like, you know, wine, especially if you have an event, for example, and you need to buy like a large quantity of it. So, you know, these are some great places to explore, and I highly recommend trying like local wines in this way. However, if you want to expand and go beyond just the wine that's available from your local region, then of course supermarket wine is going to be the next best thing. Now, the wine prices here in Italy are phenomenal, and I guarantee you they will probably blow you away because you can find bottles of wine here for as little as €2.50. Now, is that the best quality of wine that you can find? Again, it depends. I don't want you to look at the price and assume that the price is indicative of the quality of the wine, because sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Okay, so here we've got a bottle of Prosecco, which I bought because it's actually my birthday this week. Now, this bottle of Prosecco I bought from Lidl, and on the back you can see it's actually got the DOC G sticker. Now, this is one of the most premium stickers that can be applied to any kind of wine or Prosecco here in Italy. It's higher than an ordinary DOC sticker. So it's indicative of the quality of this particular bottle of Prosecco. I paid €3 for this bottle of Prosecco. Another example, this is a bottle of Grillo, a Sicilian wine, which I really enjoy. It's a white wine. Now, this I bought from Sole, and it has the DOC sticker, so it's indicative of a good quality wine. I paid just under €3 for this bottle. So that's just two examples of how a lower priced wine doesn't necessarily mean poor quality here in Italy. Now, another thing to consider is the punt or indentation under the bottle of wine itself. Now, it's long been considered that the higher the indentation, the higher the quality of the wine inside. That's actually a myth. I did some research on this because I was really, really curious. And back in the day, the punt used to be indicative of a higher quality wine, but nowadays that's obsolete. It's more for aesthetic purposes. So you will find that sometimes the lower priced bottles of wine, the wine that you can buy for €2.50, €3, may not have that indentation, but it does not mean that it is a poor quality wine. That indentation is more for aesthetics nowadays than anything else. So interesting to consider, but definitely get lost down the rabbit hole of wines here in Italy. And if you are interested in me doing a video where I talk you through some of the best wines that I've tried here in South Italy and what I recommend that you try, prices and things like this, then comment below with the word wine or the wine glass emoji if you're using your phone, just for me to get an idea as to whether or not this could be something that would interest you, because trust me, I would very much enjoy doing that kind of video. Now, something else to consider with wine is that it's always good to try the local wine, and it's usually, not always though, because I've just shown you a Grillo that was under €3, but it is usually the cheapest wine that you can buy in that area. So I'm currently living in the Campania region, and the local wine here, one of them is Falanghina as a white wine. So you will find that you can get bottles of Falanghina pretty inexpensively here in the Campania area. But as I demonstrated with the Sicilian wine before, it doesn't mean that other wine is necessarily a lot more expensive. Now, of course, if you pay more money, sometimes, yes, you will get an extremely beautiful bottle of wine, but don't discredit the lower priced bottles because it doesn't mean that they are not going to be as nice. Now let's talk about health and beauty ranges in the supermarkets, because honestly, there's something you need to know. You're not going to find a very wide selection of health and beauty products like shower gels, body lotions, dental products, etc. Because here's the thing, people don't really tend to buy these kinds of things from the supermarket unless they absolutely have to. People go to dedicated health and beauty shops like Acqua and Sapone, for example, and other shops that you may find across Italy, because in the supermarkets, those kinds of products tend to be very expensive, and you tend to find that there is less of a selection. So people just don't tend to buy that kind of stuff in the supermarket unless it's on offer or they really need to. And it's the same, I would also say, for like cleaning products as well. Now, Acqua and Sapone is a really big national chain when it comes to kind of household beauty products. And so people will tend to go there, or they may go to independent shops that sell those kinds of products as well. Lots and lots of those as well, dotted around Italy. So, you know, it really depends, because sometimes these items, if they're not on offer, they are more expensive sometimes in the supermarkets as well. Now, when it comes to pharmacy items, particularly over-the-counter items, then you may be surprised to know that you cannot always get those within the supermarket itself. It's not like you can just go to the shelf and pick up a pack of paracetamol. It doesn't really work like this. There are two types of pharmacy here in Italy. Farmacia, which is the traditional pharmacy where you can buy prescription items and non-prescription items, and the parapharmacia, which is the equivalent of like a drugstore, if I'm going to use American English, or in the UK, like a Boots or a Superdrug, okay? So the parapharmacia is where you can buy your over-the-counter medicine like ibuprofen, paracetamol, things like this. But also you can buy premium skincare ranges in these kinds of pharmacies as well. You won't find they sell everything. It's not like if you go into a Boots or a Superdrug in the UK and you can find like lots of different types of things. They tend to be very specific. They will focus on premium skincare ranges, healthcare centered stuff, and kind of over-the-counter medicines. So, you know, it's good to know this, because in a supermarket, you will have the parapharmacia, not the normal pharmacia normally. So those kinds of pharmacies you cannot use your prescription at. You can only buy over-the-counter goods. It's the same with any eye products as well. If you wear contact lenses and you need to buy some more solution for your contact lenses, or you need to buy some eye drops, you cannot always always find those in the supermarket. People tend to go to the opticians. There is this kind of very traditional mentality when it comes to shopping here in Italy, which I actually think is a good thing, as much as it can be sometimes a little bit inconvenient because you have to make time to go to these independent stores. I think it's good because these stores have specialist knowledge that you cannot obtain from a supermarket setting. So just consider, if you have to buy any of these particular items, it's often better to go to the independent stores themselves than to a supermarket. Some other tips then. I suggest that you buy the reusable bags in the supermarkets. Why? Because you pay, it depends, but usually around 15 cents now for a carrier bag, or sometimes a bit more, depends on the size. And the reusable bags are usually like €1 or €2, and they're worth it, okay? So do your bit for the environment, but also do it for your wallet as well. Another big tip, don't go to the supermarket before a really big holiday. I did a short about this recently because we've just celebrated the holiday of Ferragosto here in Italy, and trust me, oh my goodness, most of the big holidays here in Italy are centered around food, okay? Easter, Christmas, Ferragosto, and all of the big kind of public holidays here. And let me tell you, all anybody does is flock to the supermarkets. They're crazily busy at that time. So of course, you're going to need to buy food for those occasions. I suggest being as organised as you possibly can and doing as much as you possibly can in advance. And if you absolutely have to venture into the supermarket close to those holidays or on the day of the holiday itself, if they're open, then just brace yourself for the crowds, okay? Don't say I didn't warn you. Go there just for what you absolutely cannot buy in advance. But it's crazy. Like literally, they are probably my most unpleasant shopping experiences in the supermarket are at those particular times of the year. So yeah, just something to consider. Something else as well, if you want to feel like you have the supermarket to yourself, go shopping in the early part of the afternoon, especially so here in the south of Italy. I don't know what it's like in other parts of Italy, but here in the south of Italy, the early part of the afternoon, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, maybe even into 4 o'clock, tend to be the quietest times because a lot of shops are closed, people have gone home to have lunch, etc. So if you really want to have a relaxing shopping experience, that is what I would recommend to you. Go to the supermarket between those hours, pretty much any day of the week, and you will find that the supermarkets are calm, you won't have to queue as much, and there are far less people than at other times of the day. And my final tip, download any supermarket apps or get any loyalty cards that you can from the supermarkets here in Italy. Most of the supermarkets have like an app or a loyalty card, and they can be really, really beneficial. Let me show you a couple of examples. So this set of weighing scales, digital weighing scales, I should say, and this bedding that you can see here. These are two examples of items that we accumulated through loyalty points at Conad. So some of them, like the bedding, we had to pay a little bit extra towards, but for the scales, they were completely free based on the loyalty points that we had accumulated. So it pays to do these kinds of things, right? And I think sometimes we forget to do them. So pay attention to them. If you can, if there's a loyalty card, then definitely make the most of it, because every year, for example, at Conad, you have the opportunity to get something from their catalogue, and we all spend a lot on food. So why not get something back in return? I hope this video has given you a bit of an insight into supermarket culture here in Italy. If you have any tips of your own based on your experiences here in Italy, comment below and share those experiences with us. If you have any questions, comment below, and I will see you in the next video.